God ordained. Freedom is the birthright of every living being. If you meet somebody who is enslaved either by addiction or by debt or by whatever crazy outdated laws are still going on, they know they're not supposed to be enslaved to it. Everybody looking at them knows they should not be enslaved to it, that is not their natural, healthy way of being. Freedom is our birthright. It's encoded in our DNA. It's as much our birthright as the air we breathe. Now, having said that, Holmes also wrote that liberty is not license. And what he means by that is that freedom that is ours, that thing that says we can do and create whatever we want, doesn't mean we get to beat other people over the head with it. Please do not turn this particular teaching into a weapon. I've heard many of you take that weapon and beat yourself over the head with it. It's a tool. But just because you have a very effective hammer doesn't mean, clock. That's not what I'm asking you to do with it. I'm suggesting that you build the life you want. And you got one hand for reaching up to God and the other hand for reaching back for your brother or sister. Help other people through your living example to see that they too are vessels of the divine. They too are meant to bring about heaven on earth. They too are Buddhas in training, bits as it were. The old idea, if you eat pork, does that make you a bacon bit? Sorry. That was quite the left turn, was it not? There is an old, in the beginning of our recorded history, we began to see as divine those things in the world around us. And for the most part, the divine feminine was associated with the moon and the stars. Now, that's not every single culture. But if you look at the old names of different goddesses, Ishtar, Astara, those are all the same root word as the word star. And so we saw God as something very, very far away. When I was growing up, the only time God came close was when he was catching me doing something I'm not supposed to be doing, for which I had to go to confession or get put in timeout or whatever. The old idea said God was far away and cared about us about as much as those stars. Isn't it wonderful to know that some of those stars have blinked out, and so is that idea of God? It's old light that is still shining, reaching us, but its source, the source thought that God is far away, is long since gone. And so here, now, in this moment, we know that very starlight, we are golden. Remember that line? It happens to be the 50th anniversary of Woodstock, so I'm kind of into it this year. I was just born a few months too late. We know that God is fully present right here, right now, as us, in us, and is for us. Now, it's really easy to know that for all of us, but can you look in the mirror and know it for you? Can you look in the mirror and know that the divine within you is what makes you humble and kind? The divine within you, that impulse that you think just is part of you, and you're right, that weird little quirk that you have, is God within you, saying, feed the hungry. Get up and go talk to your neighbor. Find out what their names are at least, right? Meet somebody's eyes as you're wandering around town. Now, this is a place where that happens. There are places in the world where you just don't do that. New York City. If you've ever been to New York City, you know you don't meet anyone's eyes. So what would happen if you carefully and selectively decided to smile at a few people. In the midst of that separation, you would create connection. The old idea of God has burnt out. And while we still think we can see that light, it's over. That part's gone. If we are all understanding and living as divine beings, that creates a whole different world, doesn't it? Isn't that the definition of heaven? The kingdom of the divine? We also have, based on that old idea of God, a system of government that says, that talked about, does anyone remember from, social studies back in grade school, the divine right of kings? Kings, starting with pharaohs, were supposed to be the descendants of gods, the actual, God's kid, God's most important kids. And when people talk about Jesus, in order to make people understand that this was a holy man, that this was a Christ, we say he is the Son of God. Yeah. But then democracy happened. And what we started noticing is that we're all sons and daughters of God. And we all have the divine rights of kings and queens. The right to live in that freedom that is part of our natural way of being. It is absolutely ours to live from that sense of empowerment. Empowerment means that we have recognized that there is a place within us, that there is a place in our lives for us to make choices, for us to create our own lives as we would have them. So, there's an old idea that church belongs to the priests. Yes? And once upon a time, do you know that the priest would not be obviously he wouldn't be wearing, he would be wearing something like this. But the priest would be speaking in a language that you don't, and the priest would be standing like this. It wasn't about you guys. It was about the divine that I'm going to put over here. And in order to get to God, you got to come through me. I am the only one with the authority, once upon a time, to speak to God. And so if you want to have interaction with the divine, you got to go to the priest. Is that how we do it now? Do you know that back in Martin Luther's time, reading the Bible for yourself was a revolutionary act? It was how they protested. It was the original love-in. And they couldn't sit because there were no pews in the churches. They all had to stand there. Now, I would suggest to you that being able to go read any sacred scripture from any culture and any religious tradition is a revolutionary act in that you are turning things around within you. It's a revolving thing. Got it? Oh. If I turn into Wonder Woman, everybody duck. And so it is known that as we take on that authority, as we empower ourselves, what we're really doing is recognizing the God that has always been within us. We are owning our truest self. We are right-sizing our egos. And that has nothing to do with being humiliated or less than or abased. And so here in this center, things are starting to happen. Things continue to happen that are indicative of the idea that we're getting that we are very empowered here. I wandered through the building at some point this week, I think it was Wednesday or something, and I came upon some people playing with the doors in the back with the kids, or the kids' room anyway. And I have his permission to squeal on him, so I'm not breaking any secrets here. Andy tells me that the most scary moment of his, at least your week, right, was taking that saw to one of our doors and cutting it in half and going, oh God, I hope this works. Now he made it work. because he took on that power for himself to go to YouTube and find out how to do it, because he was empowered by a group of people who said, if you're willing to do that part, go do it. And he stepped into his power, and it benefits all of us, because now we don't have toddlers escaping all over the place. I understand they're very fast. I don't want to be the first one to accidentally step on them, so I like this door, and I'm very grateful that you did that. There's also the idea that we practice tithing as a community. We tithe to home office because that's a spiritual practice, a discipline that we engage in because we choose to. Now, tithing as a whole is a great big conversation to have. It's not what most people think it is. And we were given a gift last year at the very end of the year, and I'm hungry to tithe on that. There's something in me that feels incomplete, like it's not quite ours yet until we treat it the same way we treat other money, the same way we treat all the other gifts of God. But it belongs to the whole community, so we are all empowered to choose where we will tithe to. I have a couple favorites. But just because I'm into the Next Gen program, which is helping younger people become ministers in our movement, or just because I'm interacting with Habitat for Humanity a lot, doesn't mean that's the group's decision about where we're going to send this money, where we are collectively spiritually fed. And that's why this is going to become a conversation rather than, I have check writing powers and so I'm just going to do it. I have power. And I'm going to enjoy it for a moment. Give me a sec. But we collectively have a great deal of power, yes? So when we talk about inclusivity as one of our primary values, when we talk about spiritual growth, what I know is that we are all empowered to live it. And if we don't, we have to stop saying that we are practicing religious science. You might be visiting the concepts, you might be exploring the concepts, but if you call yourself a practitioner with or without a license, you have to actually step into that power and do something with it, yes? This is how life gets better. You can't keep doing the same things and expecting different results. And if you change your believing, it naturally flows that how you move about in the world will be different because your beliefs are different. How I walk on solid ground is not how I walk on water. Why? Because I believe I will fall through the water and into it and get all splishy and ruin my makeup. Oh, no, wait, Dan already did that. So in Matthew 23, Jesus tells the people he's teaching, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must obey them and do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. I can stand up here and teach you and quote from all sorts of scriptures. I can teach you all sorts of tools, but if I'm out there not living by them, then please don't do what I do. As the preacher in the room, and I hope I never preach at you, I prefer to be called a minister because one ministers to and one preaches at. You see the difference? So as we come together in the name of love and we go out into the world and teach this to other people, it is our behavior that will truly teach people. I think we all know people who can quote the greatest minds in history, but we wouldn't want to live like them. We wouldn't want to have their spiritual practice because it's fear-based or it just doesn't work for us or whatever. It's just not how we want to live. There's a story about Ernest Holmes sitting next to, I believe it was like the Anglican or Episcopal cardinal, because he was going to this theater and speaking to sold-out crowds, where across the street the church was empty. And so this cardinal sat down to him and said, "Hey, Holmes, what are you doing?" He said, "What do you mean?" "Well, I'll do everything I can to get people to church on Sunday, but they're all over here listening to you." And Holmes's answer was, "That's because we practice what you preach." Now, okay, so yes, he had a little bit of a snarky sense of humor. It makes me like him more. We practice what the holy people preach, which is why we can say we are practitioners of religious science. We can all be practitioners of religious science. I have met many, many people who were practicing religious science, but under a different name. Some of them were monks. I know a couple Trappist monks who completely fall into this. On the fourth Monday of each month, we have Swami Shankarananda. He practices this stuff day in, day out, and you can tell. But he calls it something else. The everlasting Dharma, I think it's called. Now, I don't have to do it the same way he does, but I do need to say, if these are the things I say I believe in, if I say that our values are love, thank you, love, joy, inclusivity, spiritual growth, which, thank you, Andy, are up on the door, on the wall as you walk in. My personal values are oneness, service, abundance, and something else. Sorry, I'm so into our group values right now, I can't think of the fourth one. Oneness, service, abundance, probably joy. It's on my door. Give me a minute. I'll go look. So what we know is that when we listen to that voice within us that is empowering us to create our lives, we're listening to the voice of God. And now for extra credit. With great power comes... Does anyone know whose quote that is? Spider-Man? Yeah, actually, Spider-Man's uncle says that, but originally it was Voltaire. Hey, they will sneak wisdom into all the kids' shows. They used to have classical music behind them. So with great power comes great responsibility. We are empowered to create the world that works for everyone, and that is why it's so important to remember to reach back and bring up the next one. There's an old, there's a program, I believe it started in LA, where these women who call themselves sister friends would go help new mothers and just be there for them. And I believe it's there that you got the thing about each one teach one. Each one of us should be teaching somebody. Now, here's a little secret. You're already doing it. You can't help it. You have great power within you because you're aware of what these tools are, because you are aware there's no way of going back to that sleepy state, not really, in which you think everything happens to you. As you are aware of our tools, that is the great power. The great responsibility is to go out into the world and teach people. Your behavior will do that whether you like it or not. On my altar, there's a thing that my mother gave me that says, preach the gospel everywhere you go, and when you have to, use words. What we do, what we practice, is how we create the miracles in this world. What we do, who we really are, how we decide how to get in touch with that true self. That is our gift to the world. It is a massively powerful tool. And it is our responsibility to use it on behalf of those who may not know yet that they too are divine. And so one of our great tools is prayer. Now, I make a point, and I say this every week, but for those of you who are new, I'm not just going to come out and sit next to you and be lazy for the rest of the service. I pray from here because I believe in an equal praying field. This is going to come through me right now, but you have the same power to change the world through prayer that I have. The only thing I have right now that you don't is a microphone. And so in this moment, I'll ask you to join me in that one mind, in that consciousness, in that whatever you call it within you that knows itself to be divine. Some of us feel it in our hearts, some of us in what's called the third eye chakra, some of us just get down into our gut and know truth. And it is from this place that I recognize the capital T truth that we are one, that one tide raises all boats, that as each and every one of us awaken to our magnificence, we are creating the world that works for everyone. Because as we awaken to the peace within us and to the joy and the good that is our birthright, we can't help but share it with the world. It starts within where God is, within where the truth is, where we are empowered to live from a deeper truth. And in this deep truth is the answer to all prayer. It is the oneness that destroys the lie of separation, that we are somehow separate from our good, and that we are somehow distant from God or from our own authority. From this standing in truth, I look out into a world that works for everyone. And I am grateful that it is Spirit doing this work. I am grateful that this is what already is as true. I don't have to force anything. I just accept what is with a grateful heart and live from that. And if these words resonate with you, I invite you to affirm it with me by saying, "And so it is."